Hello and welcome to the final episode of Michelson Alexander Explains for 2021. It's been a great pleasure to launch the show this year, and we're really grateful for the time that you, our listeners, have given us, and we thought we would round out the year in fitting style. On Monday night, we were lucky enough to wrap up the year at Siglo in Melbourne, and on the night we set up a roaming mic so we could interview some of our clients and friends for their reflections on 2021 and their predictions for 2022, which is what you'll find in this episode. So now I'll throw to our founder and director, Steve Michelson, for his take on the year that was.
It wouldn't be an end-of-year firm function without a bit of a speech, so here we are. And welcome to the Michelson Alexander end-of-year celebration. All of us are thrilled and humbled that you've taken the time out to be with us tonight. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and by paying my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. You know, on New Year's Eve last year, I remember topping up my glass, turning to my wonderful husband Hayden and saying, well, good riddance 2020 and bring on 2021. Surely things can only get better. And I'm sure that many of you thought the same thing. And by July, there you were sitting at home in your trackies, dialing into your 5th Teams meeting of the day, ahead of your 4th Zoom trivia night of the month, and wondering if 2020 really ended. There's plenty about the last year all of us will happily forget. But there's also so much from this year that I'm incredibly proud of and grateful for. And rather than leaving the thank yous to the end, I want to pause now, firstly, to thank all our clients who put their faith and trust in us and stuck with us through these uncertain times. And I particularly want to thank all of my incredible staff who work so hard every day to create the company worthy of that trust and to repay the faith of the great organisations that we have the privilege of working with. The crisis we've all lived through in the past 2 years has shown the power of governments, local, state and federal. But I believe it's also highlighted the value of what we do at Michelson Alexander. The pandemic has shown how important it is to provide good advice, to react and respond to rapidly changing events, and to make sure that your interests are represented and protected at crucial moments. And if we ever doubted it, the last year has shown how the decisions made by governments can affect every aspect of our lives. And those who complained about those decisions after they were made virtually had no impact. They may have grabbed a few headlines for themselves, snuck in a bit of airtime, but almost always the kind of high-profile, high-volume petitioning only served to strengthen the government's resolve. And what's more, they dealt themselves out of the next conversation about our future. They made themselves irrelevant. Their angry shouting became a kind of background noise, no more influential than the stragglers that we saw on the steps across the road. I'm proud that all of us here, our clients and our staff, work in a different way. We understand that it's not just about the sugar hit of publicity. It's not about taking a cheap shot just because it's there to be taken. We represent a group of organisations committed to achieving genuine social impact. Whether it's through increasing opportunities for women, families and girls touched by family violence or left behind despite the economic recovery, improving the community health outcomes and working with the finance industry to enhance the well-being of doctors on the front line, delivering a better deal for First Nations Australians through training and employment opportunities, and backing the green hydrogen revolution alongside our friends in the trade union movement, securing timber jobs and communities across rural and regional Victoria, supporting a new approach to alcohol and drug addiction and breaking down the stigma experienced by so many across our community, and proudly protecting and supporting the reputation and bold visions of corporate Australia. And all of us, clients and staff, understand that to achieve real change, to make meaningful, constructive impact, you need to make yourselves a part of the decision-making conversation. Your voice needs to be heard, not as a shouted slogan or a protest, or as a special pleading in the Herald Sun, but as a trusted source of information and advice. And these are the reasons why Michelson Alexander is proud to have worked with so many corporate, government and not-for-profit clients at the nexus of policy, politics and public affairs, and in doing so to be part of a big, far-reaching social change that impacts our nation. 2021 was our 4th year as a business, and the year we grew up as a firm. It was certainly a far cry from me tapping away on my laptop in board shorts. We moved into our city offices and made lots of changes to develop and improve our systems and processes. And I want to make a special shout out to my Head of Operations, James Fitzpatrick, and Executive Assistant, Natalie Wade, for their help on that task. In 2022, I hope we continue to grow. I believe we can. But I can promise all of you that whatever change the next year brings, we will always be committed to providing the best possible service, the right advice delivered in the right way. We will always remember our clients who believe in our skills and trust us to carry their causes forward. And I will always remember and be grateful to the people who make this company what it is, our outstanding staff who constantly go above and beyond the call of duty, and particularly their families whose love and support makes all the difference. I hope all of you have a safe and Merry Christmas, a relaxing summer break, and a very happy New Year. At Michelson Alexander, we've always said we don't just talk about the future, we make it, and we look forward to making 2022 with you.
So I've got with me Hugh from Align Me. Hugh McFarlane, you are one of Australia's premier marketeers. What was the biggest marketing trend of 2021 and the biggest learning for you?
I think growth. I think everybody's worked out that digital marketing is complex, difficult, and whereas 10 years ago people would say, I've got so-and-so, she's really good with words, she can be my marketer. No one says that about marketing anymore. It's become technically complex. And so just managing the growth of 2021 has been the challenge for, I think, every marketing business.
And to follow that one, what do you think will be the biggest trend of 2022? If I can ask you to gaze into your crystal ball for a moment.
It's an outflow from the first answer, process. So and I was talking to Steve before, he has the same view about your business, is that we need to put in place systems and processes to support the growth. So it's great that you enjoy growth, but you can't just grow linearly. You know, if you have 10 people, adding another 10 people isn't the answer. You need to add 10 people plus process. So for marketing this year, it's all about process.
We're here with James Fitzpatrick from Michelson Alexander. He is the senior associate here. James, what is the biggest learning for 2021 from a Strat Comms perspective?
Thanks, Sabrine. That's a really good question. And I think I've been talking to a lot of people, obviously, over the past couple of months about how they've found 2021 and what they've taken from it. And for me, it's not really Strat Comms specifically, but it's more broader advice for businesses, and particularly the business people that I've been speaking to, is that throughout COVID and the pandemic, everyone's been going through something. Everyone's been affected in some way or another, and it's all relative to that individual person. So for a Strat Comms point of view, or for a business trying to communicate with their stakeholders, their staff, their clients, their prospective clients, I think it's about understanding that those stakeholders have been through something quite difficult and quite challenging in different ways throughout COVID. And someone said this to me the other day, that the one golden rule during COVID, and I think this is great for Strat Comms people, is to always err on the side of kindness. So in any comms that you're putting together, in any difficult decision that you have to make, err on the side of kindness and try to think through what that stakeholder has been going through, whatever fashion or whatever element or whatever that looks like, err on the side of kindness during this time.
So, James, tell us what businesses can do to have a crisis comms contingency plan in place for 2022.
Previously, most businesses hadn't ever experienced a crisis, or maybe they've had little crises and they've just sort of operated business as usual. But now, because of COVID, everyone's gone through a version of a crisis. So suddenly, every business in Australia has a crisis plan, has a contingency plan, and have been working, putting that into operation with their staff and with their clients this year and last year. So I think people are starting to get a feel for what crisis management is all about. And I think the critical thing to think about for next year and going forward, as the pandemic is obviously here to stay, or COVID's here to stay in a certain fashion or a certain way, is just to make sure that your crisis plan or your crisis thinking is really flexible and adaptable. So we don't know what's going to happen next with the pandemic. We've got great scientists, we've got great medical professionals who are predicting maybe what's going to happen next, maybe what we should be doing now, what we should be doing tomorrow. But ultimately, we can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow like we used to be able to do 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I think the learning for businesses then is to build a plan that is flexible and that can adapt to the constantly changing circumstances of COVID going forward.
So I've got with me a man who is not the mayor of the gangbuster town Schitt's Creek, but instead is the mayor of the Melbourne city of Kingston, Steve Staikos. We were just having a little chat about the end of the 20-minute city. What are you talking about when you talk about a 20-minute city?
I think one of the things that the pandemic has shown us is that people really do like to live and work locally. They don't like commuting long distances. They don't like sitting in traffic across the Westgate Bridge or, in our case, on the Nepean Highway heading into town. What we want and what we're trying to achieve at the City of Kingston is what's been planned in Plan Melbourne for a long time, which is basically people can live, work, access services, education, etc., all within 20 minutes drive, 20 minutes walk or 20 minutes cycle from home. And if we can achieve that, it's a success.
And in your City of Kingston, how is that vision of the 20-minute city going?
Well, the pandemic has really helped us because what we found is our local strip shopping areas are thriving. Local businesses have expanded. More businesses now that are offering a greater suite of services. You can go to a local wine bar in your local strip of shops. You can go to a top-notch restaurant in Moorabbin, Mordialloc, or Patterson Lakes. You can work at home and then within 2 minutes be down at your local shops getting a coffee. People are choosing that sort of lifestyle. What we want to see happen out of this pandemic is, okay, we understand people will be transitioning back into the office, but why should they transition back into the office 5 days a week? Let's have flexible work arrangements where we can have the best of both worlds. Working in the office 2 days a week, working from home 3 days a week, or how about this, better yet, Major Projects Victoria have actually brought 300 office workers into the heart of Moorabbin, which means all those people who live and work in the middle ring to outer ring suburbs of Melbourne no longer have to travel all the way into Melbourne. They can work in Moorabbin. That's saving them about 45 minutes journey time. And it's providing a great boost to our suburban areas. We need more of this, not just in Moorabbin, not just in Kingston, but throughout all of the middle ring suburbs of Melbourne. And that's where something like the suburban rail loop just makes so much sense. We've got a $35 billion project that's connecting the city of Kingston in Cheltenham all the way through to Box Hill in the city of Whitehorse, and there's like 6 or 7 stations along the way. That corridor is going to be the economic powerhouse, not only of Victoria, but of Australia in the next 25 years. And so I just think it's such a magnificent opportunity for us as a council and for all the councils along that route to really leverage on that, to really invest in that, and to create that new CBD of Melbourne, that'll include Cheltenham, Clayton, Box Hill, Mount Waverley, Deakin University, Monash Hospital. It's really exciting.
What are you hearing back from your constituents by way of feedback after a really tough couple of years, and how does it flow into that vision that you've just kind of outlined?
People have had an opportunity to really think about what matters to them in their day-to-day lives. I think sometimes we look at the media, sometimes we get caught up in the whole negative narrative that surrounds what happened with the whole pandemic. But when you have the day-to-day conversations with people at the Rotary or with people at the Lions Club or with people at the men's shed, and I've been visiting men's sheds, I've got another luncheon to go to tomorrow, people talk about the things that really matter to them, what their grandkids are doing, what their families are up to, and what the future holds. People have a sense of optimism and a sense of trepidation about 2022. And I think that the best thing that we can do as a level of government, we are only local government, but we like to say we're the level of government closest to the people. We need to give people security. We need to give people hope, and we need to give people a sense that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And so by encouraging people to take the steps to keep themselves and their families safe in an uncertain global situation like the pandemic, I think that we will be able to see our economy rebound, society come back together, and we'll be able to see people lose that sense of concern that they've got about the pandemic and be able to come out of their shells a bit and come back into civic society.
So I have with me Greg Chipp, a man who has run for politics on a number of occasions and is now the Director of Drug Policy Australia, the founder and director, I believe. Greg, as a man who has lived a political life, your father, Don, founded the Australian Democrats. Should we be expecting independents and minor parties to shake up the federal election next year?
It'll be a fascinating election coming up this year. I don't think we've ever had a landscape as unique as the one we've got. Unique factors, economic factors. Obviously, the pandemic has led to a major disruption of well-being, of outlook. Governments traditionally have been blamed for economic conditions. The question enters my mind is, will they be blamed for the pandemic and perhaps not handling the pandemic as well as could have been done? Fair or unfair, factors out of their control, they could well be wearing electoral damage because of it.
And Greg, the work you do at Drug Policy Australia is all about pushing drug law reform in this country. How would you assess the current case that we're making for drug policy reform, and are we getting any closer?
Fascinating to watch the social change in people's attitudes to drug use, to people that use drugs, to people with addictions, change over a period of time. In Australia, we haven't had dramatic changes in the last few years, but internationally, there's been a stunning turnaround. And the context of the international prohibition needs really to be looked at through the focus point of what is happening in America. And the state of Oregon this year decriminalised all drugs. And I can't stress what a dramatic change that is. America, the home of the prohibition, that impacted the prohibition on the rest of the world through the United Nations at the zenith of its power in the 50s and 60s, where the world in the 70s, 80s, 90s has had almost a unique unanimity on policy that we should criminalise drug use, which effectively means criminalising those people that use drugs, and aim for a policy of zero drug use in the world, something that has never ever been achieved. So for America to decriminalise all drug is no longer a criminal offence. It's a misdemeanour with possible referral to a health service if needed. So this is dramatic. So it starts in one state. There are other states in America that are looking at similar policies, and it's a very similar cascading effect of policy reform that happened with the legalisation of cannabis in Colorado in 2013. And now about half of America has legalised regulated cannabis markets. So, Jack, the answer is this is happening internationally. It's a reform that's well overdue, but unfortunately, it's not happening in Australia, where those politicians are still playing for electoral advantage, ultimately with people's lives. Because the longer we fail to reform these counterproductive drug policies, the more people are dying at music festivals with tainted and poisonous pills, dying in back alleys. So, yes, change is happening, but slowly.
Thanks very much for that, Greg. It's obviously a sobering sentiment, but one that we look forward to continuing to work with you to change in this country. Very, very privileged to have with me Michelson Alexander's special advisor, Abul Rizvi, who is also the Deputy Secretary of the Immigration Department for many years. Abul, what was your biggest lesson in the immigration sphere from 2021?
Well, we had an extraordinary year from an immigration perspective in 2021 because we had, for the first time since just after World War II, negative net migration, something that I thought in my lifetime would never occur. And learning how governments respond to something like that, how the economy responds, how we as a society respond to that was just extraordinary.
How did we respond?
Well, sadly, governments often respond to these things either in a very panicked way, which can turn out really well. And in terms of managing the pandemic, it did turn out very well. But it also means governments panic in other ways. And some of our policy panics didn't turn out so well.
And so looking forward to 2022, and you've spoken there about negative net migration for the first time since World War II. What should we expect and look out for in the immigration sphere if we're company owners or even just everyday people?
Well, assuming the pandemic goes away, a big assumption, and all the borders do actually open, we will see the biggest recovery in net migration in our history. And how the economy copes, how our society copes, how our government copes will be fascinating.
I'm here with Monique Dawson, CEO of VicForests, and Anna Stefanatos, Director of Communications at VicForests. Guys, I just want to ask you, what's your most memorable moment of 2021?
Putting on shoes for the first time. Literally putting on shoes with a heel after not wearing shoes for months.
Are you wearing heels tonight?
I am. Very modest heels. I went for something higher and then I went, no, I'm rejecting that. And so I've gone to a modest heel for tonight.
And how are your feet feeling? Are you lasting the night?
Look, so far so good, but I have had over the last couple of weeks days where I have seriously regretted my shoe choice.
Anna, what's your most memorable moment of 2021?
Oh, there are many. There are many memorable moments. Going into the office for the first time, I sort of started during lockdown, so meeting colleagues, meeting my boss in the office for the first time was great.
And what are you both looking forward to 2022?
I just want to feel like we can get to a point where we can get into a routine. The lack of routine is so frustrating because we like a bit of adventure, but ultimately rolling out of bed, getting dressed and getting on the tram, that's the kind of routine that I yearn for.
Did you develop one of those trending morning routines of 2021?
Well, look, I did invest in some quite attractive leisure pants because I think that was a moment that it was necessary. My partner and I have a big debate about what the difference between pyjamas and leisure wear is. He feels like maybe leisure wear is a little bit too pyjama adjacent, but I do think there is a significant difference. But nonetheless, many leisure pants have been purchased. I did pull back from the sequined leisure pants, although that was going to be a moment for me. But I didn't go down that stream entirely. But I now have a lot of leisure pants I can't wear anywhere.
Anna, anything for 2022 that you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to a lot of things in 2022. I'm looking forward to going on a bit of a holiday. Well, immediately I'm just hanging out to just have a little bit of a break. Taking 2 weeks off, which I'm going to thoroughly enjoy. No work, no phone calls. But no, I'm just generally looking forward to a new sort of normal in 2022.
You mentioned a holiday break. Where is your first destination?
Well, where I'd really love to go is to the island of Corfu. I've been inspired about sort of looking and purchasing properties after catching up with an old boss of mine who's bought a chateau in the south of France. So maybe I might look for a bit of an old oil press in Corfu myself.
Well, I think that's all that I have for you today. Thank you, Monique, and thank you, Anna. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.